Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves in an odd medieval universe where you're a lord of a family. You'll be trying to gain prestige by capturing parts of the city and using your influence to win the battles. Henchmania is for 2 to 5 players, it's for ages 12 and up, and it takes 45 to 60 minutes to play and is published by Jocus. Now this is the second edition of the game, and it has new gameplay, new design, and even 2 new expansions to come. Now it's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are prototypes, they're not final. To see all the most up-to-date art and components, check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video. At the beginning of the game, each player will select a coat of arms and they'll start with 5 prestige, and you're trying to gain prestige throughout the game. And you'll also be starting with 8 henchmen that go along with your coat of arms. The game is played over multiple rounds known as days, and each day has 3 phases. The first phase is you're basically placing your henchmen pawns. Now, going with the first player and going clockwise, each player is going to place a henchman in a specific spot like this, and then they're going to take the corresponding card. You're going to be building a hand of cards. Now each of these different sites can only have a certain amount of henchmen regardless of which players are putting them there. You can have multiples of there could be different players there, but in total there can't be more depending on the amount of players. So if you're playing a 4-player game, a total of 7 henchmen is the most that can go there. And it's the same restriction on all of the different sites. Now why do you go to one site versus another? Because when you're drawing these cards, essentially, again, you're building a hand of cards, which is going to help you with your strategy. And like the blue's the armory, and this is going to help you with accessories and different weapons and things. Maybe you go to the castle, which is going to help you, entertain the royal court and get points from set collection. If you go to the tavern, you're going to mess with your opponents with some tricks and such. The main square is going to help you in duels, which we'll talk about a little bit. And the church is going to, basically, your devotion is going to be rewarded by divine providence, and you're going to improve your performance score that way. Then, after all players have placed 1 henchman going clockwise, and they've all been placed, this is going to be the end of this phase, but you're going to look at each of the sites and you're going to see who has dominance. Like us, we have 3 and they have 2, so we'll get to draw another card, and so on and so forth. Yellow will get to draw one from here, green from here. Now here, when there's a tie, it's 2 to 2, nobody has dominance, and here blue would get to draw that. Then you go to the next phase. Then you go into the phase where you're going to be playing cards. Again, starting with the start player and going clockwise, each player is going to play 1 card, and these cards do all sorts of different things. If it has this lightning bolt, it means it happens immediately. It's an action and you need to do what it says. Like this is pick an opponent, take 1 card from their hand and put it in yours, but you can look at the back of the cards to know what type of card you're getting from them. You would do this action, you would place this in the corresponding discard pile, or maybe you play something like this, where it's like, hey, you can pick a card in a discard pile and add it to your hand. So all sorts of different actions here that allow you to do different things. Now you're only playing 1 card, and then it's going to the next player clockwise, and you keep going in a circle like that. But let's say I play this one. If it has a number here, this goes in your reserve. The reserve is just a spot in front of you that you play cards face up, and you can never have more than 8 cards in your reserve, and this tells you how many cards you can have of this exact one. So the Jester Performance, we can only have absolutely 1 of those, but in future turns, you might play a different performer, like a Minstrel Performance. Again, this can only have 1, but you're collecting these different ones here, or maybe in a future turn, you also place this one. Remember, only 1 of each of these can be played. Now at the end of the round, you're going to be getting points for these as long as they're sort of still in your reserve. Remember, other players' cards can affect which cards are in your reserve and such, but this gives you points depending on different ones you have. So if I only had 1 of these cards, I'd get a point. If I had 2 of them, I'd get 3. And if I have 3 different ones like this, I'd get 5 points, or prestige, if you will. And that's what you're trying to do to win the game. Now each deck has exactly 1 trump card, and these are special cards. They don't count towards the 8, but you would play this separately to the side of this. And like this one, for example, at the end of the day, which is the end of the round, you can rotate this card and add 2 points to one of your performance cards. So again, that's basically a one-time use for that day or what have you. But these are very powerful cards. Another thing you might do is play a glove or something that allows you to challenge another opponent to a duel. When you do this, you get to choose another player, any player. And then you may play a weapon if you want to. You don't have to. If you don't, you're fighting with your bare hands, but it's always better to play with a weapon, because this is saying if I'm the attacker, I just have to roll for every 3 or higher, I'll be able to possibly hit them. Then the defender has to decide if they're going to play something to help defend, and if they don't, again, it's bare hands, it's not very good. But maybe they play an Iron Shield, which is better with defense because rolling a 3 or more helps them defend any hits that may have gone through. So once they've decided, using a weapon and or something to defend, or bare hands, the attacker's going to roll 3 dice. So let's say they rolled a 1, 3, and a 4. With the axe, they just need a 3 or higher. So this did not hit, but the 3 or the 4 possibly would. So there's 2 possible hits here. So let's say now the defender's going to roll only the possible hit and look at theirs. So they rolled this to 2 and a 5. They needed at least a 3 to defend. So this one defended, but this one was unable to defend. In that case, the attacker would win. So the attacker's going to gain 5 prestige, and the defender's going to lose 1 for every one that he couldn't hit that was a successful hit. So this was the one he did not defend, so he'd lose 1 point there. Now, if all hits are either sort of missed or they're defended like this, then a defender wins. Like in this case, he needed to roll a 3 or more. He rolled 3 or more on both of the possible hits. And so in this case, the defender wins. They just get 2 points for prestige, and the attacker just gets -1. So that's how duels work. Now, some cards that you play into your reserve have this icon, and this means when it says at your turn, instead of playing a card when it's your turn, you can turn it and then do what it says. So you can rotate this card, then you can pick a choir boy's card from in the church discard pile. So we could do this, go through the discard pile in the church, and possibly bring one of these up. Only one of these can be in your reserve. And at the end of the round, you essentially can discard this card and gain 1 point to each of your performances. Remember, those performances were the things that we talked about earlier, like the jester performance, for example. Or maybe you were in battle and you prayed, and at any time you could discard this card to re-roll one of the dice, and that might help you in a duel. Or maybe you use holy water, and at any time discard it to add 1 to the value of your dice. Now let's say somebody else plays one of these nasty cards from the tavern, that immediately they'd get to pick an opponent and choose a card from their reserve to put it into yours. Say someone played this and they say, you know what, I want your prayer card. You might have this in your reserve, and at any time you could discard it and cancel the effect of a tavern card. So if you had this, it kind of gives you defense. They probably wouldn't choose you because they know that you have that and you could sort of defend against it. Now the prayer allows you to discard to reroll 1 of your dice, but the trump card from the church allows you to reroll 1 or several of your dice. Now let's show you some cards from the main square, like this. These all go in your reserve, and when you put a henchman down, you can discard this card to earn an additional spot on a site that's already full. So you can sort of break that rule and go in a place that already has the full amount of henchmen. You can play this, and as long as this Nosy Parker's in your reserve, you can keep a card for the next day, because usually you're going to be getting rid of cards that you have not played. Your reserve cards will stay from day to day though, but you might have cards in your hand that you might want to hold till next round. Or the Apothecary, you can discard the card and cancel a hit that you weren't able to defend during a duel. And the trump card for this area is Bravery, where you can turn it and essentially cancel the effects of anything affecting your hand or your reserve. So let's look at some of the cards from the armory. That a sword's really good for attacking. You only need 2 or more. It's not as good for defending. You need 4 more. Now remember, if you don't use one of these and you fight with bare hands, instead of needing this, you always need a 6 to either attack or defend if you don't have a weapon. Coat of Mail's great, better for defense, but it's not bad for attacking either. And then this one here, again, as you can see, it depends on what you have there. But with the trump card is Confidence, and at any time you can rotate that card to add 1 to your dice value, whether you're attacking or defending. So essentially you're going to be doing this, playing cards one at a time, or possibly taking actions from those cards that I showed you. Once everyone has gone through and done all their actions and such, it's going to be the end of the day. Then everyone will gain points for the performances that I showed you. Any cards that were turned will kind of reset for yourself, and you're going to basically start a new round. Now, after everyone's gotten points, regardless of which round it is, if anyone has 30 or more, the person who has the most wins. Otherwise, at the end of the 4th round or day, the person with the most prestige wins. Now, there are some different expansions available. One of them is called the King's Whims, and this comes with a board that helps you track the rounds, but also this card will be different each round, and like this one says, the Day of Rest. And at the end of playing your cards in that phase, each set of 2 cards, similar or not, remaining in your hand earns 2 points. So if you have cards that don't really go with your strategy, you can hold them and gain points. Or maybe the Day of Fight, where the number of henchmen you can place on the armory is unlimited, but you don't get anything for the majority. But if you want to, you can fight the king. And there's many different cards that do different things here. Another one is a throne room. And here, after everyone's done placing all their henchmen, but before counting up the majorities for dominance, a player can remove, going in last in turn order and going counterclockwise, so you're going reverse turn order, you can remove one of your henchmen from the board and place it in one of these stained glass spaces. And depending on the amount of players, there can only be a certain amount of henchmen in each of the stained glass. Then, in the playing cards phase, Players can remove one of these to take the action of that stained window, but each player will only be able to at most have 2 henchmen out here, and they can never have the same henchman on the same stained glass. But you can do different, you can remove them to take the different abilities. And these do all sorts of different things, like we talked about earlier, betting on a duel or returning some of the cards you used and things like that. Now another one you can play with is another area called the Sanctuary, so when you're placing your henchmen, you can place here and draw a card as normal. However, since you can mix these different expansions together, you cannot remove somebody from the Sanctuary to put them in that throne room that we just talked about with the stained glass. So let's look at some of these new cards. For example, the Accomplices, you would turn it, and then at your turn, for your turn, you basically will discard a card from your hand to pick a discard from any pile. Or the Ox, as long as it remains in your reserve, he raises the maximum number of cards in your reserve by 3. So instead of having 8, you could have 11 of them there. The Huckster, at the end of each day, you roll the dice. If it's 3 or more, you earn 3 points. Otherwise, you discard it to lose 2. And the very powerful Trump card here, again, you would turn it and basically straighten a card from your reserve. So rotate another one there. So that's pretty much it. Those are all the different ways to play the game. Well, there you have Henchmania, and as I showed in the overview, you're trying to gather the right cards to formulate your strategies, and knowing when to play them is key to victory. Now, if you'd like to see all the most up-to-date art and components and the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me right in the description of this video, and it will take you to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure that Jokus would love your support.